Hello, my name is Lindsay Lunari and welcome back to my channel. Or welcome to my channel if this is your first time tuning in. Today I'm going to share with you my top 10 favorite film scores of all time. A film score is original music that is written for a film. They are often a mix of orchestral and choral compositions, but sometimes they are more electronic or have elements of different musical genres and styles. I have personally always admired film scores for their ability to draw out our emotions and to take us to faraway places. They are, in my opinion, an essential part of the escape that we reach while watching movies. Each score that I'm going to mention today holds a very special place in my heart and never fails to give me chills. To be honest, it was quite difficult to narrow this list down to 10, but I will definitely be sharing some honorable mentions at the end. Now let's get started. Number 10, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, 2003, composed and produced by Klaus Badelt and Hans Zimmer. This soundtrack is so cool and undeniably gripping and powerful. I saw this movie in the theater when it came out and I immediately was blown away by the music. I thought that it fit the story and action so perfectly. It's heavy when it needs to be, but there are softer moments where the music creates this amazing suspense that really draws you in. I love the percussion in the score, the low bass lines, the use of pan flute in moments of eeriness, as well as the male choir voices. This score was quite the collaboration, actually. They were on a short deadline, so other composers were enlisted to help out, to write some cues, and to help with the orchestration. Some of those composers were Ramin Djawadi, Steve Jablonsky, and James Dooley. I really want to watch this movie in the theater again, because it's been so long since I've had that experience. It has to be one of my favorites to watch on the big screen. It also has one of my favorite final scenes in any film, when Jack Sparrow is holding his compass, looking out onto the horizon, and he's singing quietly to himself, and he says, "Drink up me hearties, yo-ho," and then it cuts to the credits while playing the film's theme. That part gives me chills every time. Number 9, The Princess Bride, 1987, composed by Mark Knopfler, lead singer, guitarist, and songwriter of the band Dire Straits. This movie and its score are the epitome of nostalgia in my heart, like many other films on this list actually. I've loved this film's music since a very young age. It's comforting to me. The theme is very delicate and romantic, but not in a cheesy way. And I love all of the acoustic guitar overlaid with harp and woodwinds. The song Storybook Love, which was written and performed by Willie DeVille, is very sweet and encapsulating, and it was actually nominated for Best Original Song at the 1988 Academy Awards. The song Guide My Sword, which plays as Inigo Montoya is asking his late father to guide him to the opening of the Pit of Despair so he and Fezzik can find Wesley, accompanies the scene so beautifully in my opinion. And aside from those more softer themes, we can't forget about the tracks that are also darker themes that are present during the scene with the Cliffs of Insanity, or in, what's it called, the Fire Swamp segment. I enjoy those as well as the music that plays over the more action-packed sequences, like the sword fight between Inigo and Wesley, and the chase scene with Inigo and Count Rugen in the castle at the end of the film. Number 8, Tron Legacy 2010, composed by Daft Punk. If you have not heard the soundtrack to Tron Legacy before, I highly recommend listening to it immediately. Watch the film and pay close attention because it's brilliant in my opinion. Daft Punk, for those of you who don't know, are an electronic French music duo, so this is probably the most unique film score on this list. Tron Legacy is also the only film score that Daft Punk has ever done. I saw Tron Legacy in theaters and I became completely obsessed with the soundtrack, which combines elements of electronic and orchestral music to create this hugely dynamic and enticing and compelling score. I remember coming home from the theater actually and purchasing the score off of iTunes right away, and I must have listened to it on repeat for like a month or so, and I still do that from time to time. It's really that good. In an interview with Collider, Daft Punk was asked how they visualized the score, and in Bangalter's words, "When we started to look at the concept art, we actually started putting music together before we had the script. We thought of the digital world as being like a desert. Jeff Bridges' character almost looks like the Ten Commandments. We liked the idea of taking classic Hollywood scores and tried to clash it against electronics and 1970s science fiction soundtracks with a much darker feel." Number 7, Forrest Gump, 1994, composed by Alan Silvestri. The score for Forrest Gump, it makes me happy, it makes me sad, and it makes me ponder the journey of life. The opening of the film, where the feather is floating on a breeze, backed by Silvestri's soft piano track, always puts me at ease and fills me with a sense of calm and hope, and you know you're in for something special. The score for Forrest Gump was nominated for Best Original Score at the 67th Academy Awards. I love the scenes where Forrest is running and the music is very spirited. There are a handful of uplifting tracks as well as tracks that accompany more serious scenes, like when Forrest is standing at Jenny's grave, or when Lieutenant Dan is talking about the destiny that should have been his. I think Silvestri's score is very well suited to the story, and I think it fits the film very well. We are on Forrest's journey, really, and I think the score is his heart at times. Number 6, Titanic, 1997, composed by the late James Horner. Titanic's score is one of the highest selling scores of all time. It was like number 1 on the US Billboard 200 list for 16 weeks in a row, and it was also number 1 in many other countries such as Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. My heart feels very heavy when I think of the music from Titanic. It's, without a doubt, probably the saddest film score to me personally, and it's not one that I can just sit down and listen to at any time. It's very beautiful and haunting and orchestral, and not only does it have tracks like Rose and Hymn to the Sea, which are more romantic and ambient, but it also has songs like Southampton and Leaving Port that are more joyous and hopeful. The song My Heart Will Go On, which was performed by Celine Dion, won Best Original Song at the 1998 Academy Awards and several Grammys in 1999 as well. In my opinion, I think there are very few scores as perfect as Titanic's, and I do wish I had the emotional capacity to listen to it on a more regular basis. One thing I recently learned is that the director of Titanic, James Cameron, he initially had reached out to Enya to compose the score for Titanic. She actually ended up turning it down, and that's when he reached out to James Horner. And may he rest in peace. Number 5, The Lion King, 1994, composed by Hans Zimmer, featuring songs written by Elton John with lyrics by Tim Rice. The Lion King has absolutely my favorite music out of all of the Disney animated films, with songs like Circle of Life, Hakuna Matata, and Can You Feel the Love Tonight, which are very beloved and well known. But I really want to shed some light on the songs from the orchestral score that people don't talk about as often, such as Stampede, which plays during that terrifying scene. The song is as suspenseful, in my opinion, as what you are seeing on the screen, and Mufasa Dies is the track that plays during his death. And I know it wouldn't have been as sad if the score was not as sorrowful as it is. My favorite out of all of the orchestral score tracks would have to be Kings of the Past, which plays during the scene where Mufasa is talking to Simba about the kings of the past who are watching over him from the stars. And he tells him that one day he will watch over him too. There's so much deep emotion in the score for The Lion King, and I think the score fits the story and the setting so well. Remember Who You Are is also one of my favorite pieces that plays when Simba sees his father's ghost in the water and Rafiki says, "He lives in you." Then Simba is visited by the spirit of his father and he tells him to remember who he is. And that part always brings tears to my eyes. I recently read that the Lion King soundtrack is the best-selling album for an animated film in the US. It has sold millions of copies, and it won the Academy Award for Best Original Score in 1995, which coincidentally was the same year that Forrest Gump was nominated. Number 4, Transformers, 2007, composed by Steve Jablonsky. This probably seems like a random entry on this list, but it's really not. I've always loved the score for Transformers, and Steve Jablonsky is an extremely talented composer. After the initial release of Transformers, there was not a coinciding soundtrack score released, so fans actually started to demand a CD release of the score, and an online petition was actually created. I believe almost 6,000 people signed it, and then Warner Brothers announced that the score would be released. I do remember this actually, but I'm not 100% sure if I signed the petition, but I think if I knew about it in time, I would have. I just can't really recall. My favorite tracks off of the Transformers score would definitely be Autobots, Optimus, the Allspark, and Bumblebee. They're very orchestral and encompass the more emotional elements within the story. So if you have not listened to the Transformers score, looked up the songs and listened to them on their own, I would highly recommend it. Or next time you're watching the film, pay special attention to the score. I think a lot of times in action films, people don't pay as much attention to the music, that's backing what you're seeing on scene, but for Transformers, I think it's definitely worth the listen. Number 3, Jurassic Park, 1993, composed by John Williams. I really wanted to put more of John Williams' scores on this list, but I thought it would be a little more interesting to narrow it down. And maybe in the future I'll do like a video specifically for John Williams scores, because there are so many that deserve to be highlighted. As far as the score for Jurassic Park goes, it was a no-brainer for me to include it on this list. It's really iconic, and it has to be one of my favorites since such a young age. I remember asking my piano teacher if I could learn the theme song from Jurassic Park when I was like 9 or 10, and it's still one of my favorite songs to play to this day. And I actually have the original like sheet music that she gave to me, and yeah, I'll probably never throw this out. It's just very nostalgic and special. I immediately think of childhood when I think of Jurassic Park and the music. It brings out some very special memories, such as going to the theater, going to Universal Studios with my dad and brother, going on the Jurassic Park ride together. When John Williams and Steven Spielberg collaborate, which is often because Williams is Spielberg's go-to composer, the outcome is usually magical. One of my favorite scenes in Jurassic Park, where the music and visuals are especially captivating, is the scene where they see the Brachiosaurus for the first time. Another scene I love is when Alan is sitting with Lex and Tim up in the tree. The track that is heard in the scene supports the sweet, calming moment between the three of them so perfectly. And let's not forget the scene in the end where they escape the T-Rex and, well, the Velociraptors and the T-Rex, and it lets out this truly ginormous roar, and then the sign falls down in front of it, and then they escape. And of course the soft theme that plays when the group is flying safely away on the helicopter. Number 2, the Harry Potter series, 2001 to 2011. So I know this is probably cheating because there are like 8 Harry Potter films, but I can't for the life of me narrow it down to just one film score. But the Harry Potter films are like one big story, and many of the films have variations of some of the same themes. So for that reason, I'm including all of them here. John Williams, the legend, composed the first 3 film installments and brought us the beloved Hedwig's theme and Harry's Wondrous World. Patrick Doyle composed the 4th film, Nicholas Hooper composed the 5th and the 6th films, and Alexander Desplat composed the 7th and the 8th. I will say though that the Sorcerer's Stone and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2 are probably my most favorite musical scores out of all of them. The soundtrack to the Sorcerer's Stone I owned as a child, and I would just listen to it 24/7, and I never have gotten tired of it. This film was definitely one of the very first that I remember being so moved by the music. I saw it in theaters, and I became entranced right away during the scene where, the first scene where Hagrid and Dumbledore are on Privet Drive. The track that plays is so eerie and mythical, and you're immediately pulled into Harry's world. Williams' score never fails to keep you there, with tracks like Christmas at Hogwarts, the Quidditch match, and the Invisibility Cloak. Fun fact, I recently learned that James Horner was approached to compose this film, but he turned it down. As you know, James Horner was the composer for Titanic. The Deathly Hallows, composed by Alexander Desplat, is full of memorable tracks and musical motifs as well, and I'm obsessed with it. I think The Deathly Hallows Part 1 has one of my favorite film openings of all time. The track Obliviate, which slowly fades in and plays during this sort of somber montage of Harry, Ron, and Hermione at their homes. There's a feeling of dread building, and I think the music plays an important role there. I actually have the sheet music for Obliviate. It's a really fun song to play. I also love how Obliviate fades very perfectly into the next song on the score, which is called Snape to the Malfoy Manor. That song is very cool and dark and gripping. The overall tone of the last couple films is more somber than the earlier films in the series, and I really think Desplat did a beautiful job of conveying that darkness through the music. When referring to the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Desplat said that he alternated between themes of situations or locations, themes of characters, and themes for magical devices. Lily's theme is a very well-known and loved track from the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and I really love it. It's definitely a song I would like to cover for this channel one day. The track is heard in the opening scene as we see a very lonesome Snape standing in a corridor overlooking a dreary Hogwarts. The vocals heard in the track are by Mei Fujisawa, who is the daughter of composer Joe Hisashi. I also think that the tracks that play during the Battle of Hogwarts are incredibly spellbinding, like Statues, Courtyard Apocalypse, The Grey Lady, and Snape's Demise. The music off of the Harry Potter films is definitely critically acclaimed, and I cannot think of any music as magical. Number 1, The Lord of the Rings, 2001 to 2003, composed by Howard Shore. So if you have seen the vocal covers that I have posted on this channel, this probably doesn't come as a surprise to you. I have a very deep love for the music from the Lord of the Rings series, and it's probably my mission to cover all of the songs with vocals on them. I love the music from all 3 films, but the first film score is probably my favorite. It won the Academy Award for Best Original Score the same year that Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was actually nominated, and it won the Grammy for Best Soundtrack Album. I actually went to see the Fellowship of the Ring at the Silicon Valley Symphony a few years ago. I have the program here. Watching the film with a live orchestra was definitely one of the greatest experiences of my life. There's so much range and versatility within the score, from delightful tracks like Concerning Hobbits to menacing tracks like Flight to the Ford, to dreamy tracks like Lothlorien, and romantic tracks like The Council of Elrond and May It Be. Enya, her vocals are featured on both of those songs. The ending of The Bridge of Khazad-dûm is definitely one of my favorite musical pieces of all time. The vocals are so haunting and perfectly accompany the group's heartbreak in that sequence. And the Breaking of the Fellowship, featuring In Dreams, is one of my favorites as well. I think the score is its own character, really, and maybe we can think of it as like the 10th Fellowship member. The second and third films have amazing scores as well. The Two Towers won the Grammy for Best Soundtrack Album, and it features some of my favorite tracks like Even Star, The King of Golden Hall, and Gollum's Song. The third film, Return of the King, won Best Original Score and Best Original Song for Into the West, as well as the Grammy. On Wikipedia, the Lord of the Rings films are described as epic fantasy adventure films, and I think this description can be applied to the music as well. We are taken on such a journey through each composition, and it's extremely transcendent and uncomparable. And those are my top 10 favorite film scores of all time. Definitely let me know down in the comments what your favorite film scores are, and if any that I talked about today would make your top list. I'm also going to leave a link down below to my Spotify playlist called Eternal Worlds, which is a mix I've created that has film scores, television music, and gaming music for you to listen. I'm thinking of making a video of my top television scores and game scores one day, but for now, I will leave you with some film score honorable mentions.